place, and we're in Chicago.
Are they already in Chicago?
The one and only Leo Biaz. Hey, Leo.
I'm excited to be back, my man. It was 9 days in Vegas. We got stuck in the desert, and we had a little hangover remix out there, man.
I wore a wig to school once, and they said no headgear was allowed.
How did
Spiderweb
was it
tights.
Obvious that it was a wig?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was
It
having
was a terrible
fun.
wig.
See, this is exactly why we have them on the show, and this is what makes them fun.
You're listening to KXVS, the voice of Stockton, 92.1 FM.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
Hello, welcome to Chef Tobias Cooks, here where we have kitchen conversations with professional chefs, cooks, home cooks, bakers, and people that just can't cook. So join us every week for our kitchen conversations and learn a thing or two. And I don't burn nothing in my kitchen.
KXVS, the voice of Stockton, live. The voice of Stockton at Stone Soup Studio. KXVS.org.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS, the voice of Stockton, or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
KXVS on 92.1 coming soon. KXVS.
The day that the United States was the only country ever to drop an atomic bomb on a civilian population or on any population at all. And today it is noteworthy that we have as our guest Valeria Salamanca, who is a representative for Tri-Valley Cares. And if you don't know about Tri-Valley Cares, you really should, because it has been an organization that has been in the forefront of working against what is happening out at Livermore Lab and Site 300, just maybe 30, 40 miles away from us on the way to the Bay Area. Livermore Lab is where nuclear detonators are, Site 300 is where nuclear detonators are fired, and Livermore Lab is where nuclear weapons are designed, and it's a place where we as locals can have an impact in terms of protesting and talking about whether we need nuclear weapons at all. So anyway, welcome, Valeria.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you here. I know that you're exhausted and tired, but we'll see if we can squeeze an hour out of you. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, a lot of people in Stockton don't know about Tri-Valley Cares. And I was wondering if you could maybe introduce our listeners to what Tri-Valley Cares is and does, and maybe who they are.
Okay, yeah. So Tri-Valley Cares is a grassroots organization based out in Livermore, California. So again, on the way to the Bay Area, and it's about 5,700 members as of now, and it's all people who live near Livermore Lab, who work near Livermore Lab, or who recreate near Livermore Lab.
So 5,700 people work at Livermore Lab.
Are members of Tri-Valley Cares.
Are members of Tri-Valley Cares. Okay, wonderful. So 5,700 people. Oh my gosh, that's huge. So and the organization is based out of Livermore.
Yes.
And so, who is the leader, and who's is there one leader, or is it like a board of directors, or how is the place structured?
So we do have a board of directors. All our current members. So Most live in Livermore or Tracy, and then we have our executive director, who is also a co-founder. Her name is Mary Leah Kelly.
Okay.
She is
famous.
Yes. When it comes to nuclear abolition, definitely she's the go-to expert, at least for me, and I know she's a key resource even nationally with different groups that work to disarm different labs and also for nuclear power plants. But.
Yeah. So she goes to testify at D.C. against different things that are happening at the lab, and talks about and gets a lot of information out into the community with the Tri-Valley Cares newsletter, which we get, and which I try to put things into connections on a time-to-time basis. I should put more in, and your being here will remind me of doing that. But what are recent developments? I know this being the 6th, today was a demonstration day, wasn't it? Yeah. So normally on Hiroshima Day, there is an action at the gates of the Livermore Lab. Yes. And that happened today, this morning?
Yes. So it started at 8 a.m. We had a few guest speakers, including the famous whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg, one of the survivors of the
whistleblower being a whistleblower on the Pentagon Papers.
Yes,
right?
working on the Pentagon
in the Vietnam days.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And he authored. I should know the title.
That's fine.
The Doomsday Machine, I think it's called, but. I've heard it's a really interesting read. I haven't had a chance to read it myself.
He's a very interesting guy. And who else was there?
Let me pull up the flyer so I could quote exactly. We had an associate professor who works in Santa Cruz. Her name is Professor Christine Hong. She is a UC Santa Cruz expert on Korea. So she led a really passionate speech today about really letting the Korean people be liberated, really, not be a pawn in this game that's involved with nuclear weapons.
So there was a discussion about the Korean negotiations.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, because a lot of it seems like our president just seems to want to jump from headline to headline or from one distraction to another, and it just seems that he treated the North Korea incident as like just another episode in his reality show. But the nuclear threat in Korea is real. The United States, and arguably you could say that it's understandable given the rhetoric that comes out of the United States in the past 30 years, that a small country would develop such weapons just by way of trying to stay viable, to try to stay alive. And so you would say, well, why would North Korea do this horrible thing of trying to develop one nuclear weapon, whereas we have, do you know how many nuclear weapons the United States has?
I wish I knew the exact number.
I think it's in the thousands. I think it's like definitely. 3,000 or 4,000.
Yeah.
And it's down from what it once was in the Cold War days. But still, for North Korea to develop that one nuclear weapon, and then as a means of self-defense to say, well, you don't bomb us because we have something to defend ourselves. Because North Korea has seen what happened to countries that gave up their nuclear weapons, like Iraq and Libya.
There was discussion on that today. I mean, it was
Iran now.
Yeah, they were talking about how it's ridiculous to expect other countries to disarm if we're building new nuclear weapons as of now. Like the new one, I think it's the Warhead 84, I want to say, or one of them. It's such a new design that it's practically a new weapon when it's supposed to be a life extension program.
Yeah.
So
because it used to be stockpile stewardship seemed to be the byword in terms of they were back. I don't know, maybe this is 10 years ago, where there was a treaty that said we weren't going to add to our nuclear stockpile, but what ended up happening is that the old nuclear weapons that we had were going to be replaced by newer, better, more reliable nuclear weapons, and that's where the actions at Livermore Lab happen. Is that at Site 300 is in order to ensure that the weapons that we have are reliable, they have to test them. And if they're going to put new ones in, then they have to test those as well. New replacements for the ones that are going out of.
Yeah, and if it's
service.
such a new design, I mean, Mary Leah was talking about it. I mean, she's been told by experts that it's going to push for full-scale nuclear testing again. So because it's going to be so new, they don't know how it's going to react. It's so far from the actual base design. But yeah, it's supposed to be just a life extension program where they maintain it, but each time they maintain it, they're actually adding new features. So it's so far from the original.
Right. Yeah, because the original, I mean, the weapon that was used, what would it have been? 63 years? But
73
years ago today. Was so small compared to what sort of firepower we possess right now.
Yeah, we had Reverend Nobuaki Hanuaka. Sorry, I butchered his name. He was saying that the biggest one now, which is under Russia's control, is 3,300 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bombing.
And the Hiroshima bombing killed 80,000 outright, right? Yeah. Right at the bombing, and then injured 80,000 more.
Yeah, he was describing his story. He was an infant, I think, at the time, and both his mother and sister passed away from leukemia, and his brother later on, 30 years, passed away from premature aging. They did an autopsy and saw that his organs were of an 80-year-old.
Oh my God! So were they in and around Hiroshima or
they were miles away from the city limits, but they were still affected from the exposure of it. So it's crazy to think that
it's demonic. It's the device and there are folks who swear that if we hadn't dropped that bomb, then there would have been so many more lives killed by the invasion of Japan. But those sorts of hypotheticals, especially when they are being put out there by a government that has just used nuclear weapons and is trying to justify the death of 80,000 civilians, the rationale sort of rings a little hollow. I mean, I know it's what my father believed when he was very happy that the war was over, and that the story was that these weapons had to be used in order to end this war. But every other war has ended without the use of nuclear weapons and killing 80,000 civilians. And there are all sorts of scenarios where the United States, who had the upper hand at that point in the war, could have done all sorts of different scenarios. And I know that there are all sorts of books and items that people have written as to what sort of alternatives could have been used. But I would hope that people and to put an exclamation point on it, 3 days later, another bomb was dropped on Nagasaki.
Yeah.
And it would seem that it was just a way to test that type of bomb, and in a way that I'm sure 6 days after that dropping the bomb, Japan surrendered, and it was the end of the war. But there is any alternative scenario could have said, well, maybe a demonstration weapon on an unpopulated island or something that would have been less catastrophically
sent the message,
horrible, could have done the job. So right now, what we're talking about now, it seems like this is Peace and Justice Connections. This is Bruce Giudici with Valeria Salamanca, who is a representative of Tri-Valley Cares, which is a great organization over in Livermore working to free us from nuclear weapons. So where we are now, it seems that there is a push, like you're saying, in terms of developing new weapons. And these would be, from what I read, like smaller, more tactical nuclear weapons.
Yeah, so I don't remember the technical names, but I know one of them was a low-yield weapon, where the Trump administration was arguing that it it would deter because it wouldn't be as big, but still, when you're in an unsuspecting country and you see a nuclear weapon, you're not looking at size, you're looking at first attack.
Right.
So it doesn't matter whether it's low yield or not. So.
And what is low yield?
Oh, sorry.
Does that mean like 80,000 civilians, or does that mean? I mean, what
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, what is the level of destruction? People who just throw around I had always grown up with the idea that nuclear weapons were not to be used. Nuclear weapons were to deter somebody else from attacking you. And, mutually assured destruction. That's what it was in the 60s. And that's sort of what, and that's the reason why the Soviet Union and now Russia has so many nuclear weapons, the United States as well. Both sides have enough nuclear weapons to destroy this planet many times over.
Yeah,
I mean, if we're talking about one nuclear weapon that has what you said, 3,300 times the power of the Hiroshima bomb. 3,300. That is just astounding.
Yeah,
let's see,
I don't know why
3,300 times 80,000. Yeah, I mean, if you drop that like in a populated area, like somewhere on the East Coast or somewhere it's just astounding what sort of devastation that would have.
Yeah, I mean, I think
and that's
80,000.
one bomb.
Yeah, I think 80,000. I think that's the entire population of my hometown, which is Tracy.
Yeah,
just everything gone.
And that might be thought of as being a low-level tactical device at this point.
Compared to nowadays. And they, I know Mary Leo was talking about today. She was one of the speakers during the ceremony today. She was saying another one of the weapons it's a long-range standoff. So basically, it's the pilot's a couple thousand miles away, and it's a sneak attack, so it's not a deterrent if it's a sneak attack. That's again first use, and I know there's a couple bills being. I don't know if they got pushed yet or what stage they're in.
Well, the United States is the country that is I believe, at least a long time ago, but it probably hasn't changed, is the country that has never said that they weren't going to use a nuclear weapon as a first-use weapon. No. All other countries have said we're not going to use it. It's not going to be a first-use weapon. So for everybody else, it's a deterrent. But for the United States, which is the policeman of the world, they reserve the right to use it as an attack weapon.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people like to think that United States is lily white and pure and does everything right and according to Hoyle. And the more you learn, the more you find out about things, the more you should be calling your congressperson, and engaging in your democratic rights, because we do have a problem here. The nuclear, the last, the military budget that came through, that came after the huge tax cuts that were passed in December, was a huge increase in military spending, and it was a huge increase in monies that are going to go to Livermore Lab and to Site 300. And we're just at the same time where you and I are just scrounging away on just on just minimum wage. I memean, you're just telling me that you're going to be just becoming not just becoming, but you're going to be becoming a volunteer at Tri-Valley Cares, and you're going to be moving into financial services for disadvantaged folks. And there are so many disadvantaged folks who are just barely getting by on figuring out how they're going to get from paycheck to paycheck. Where at the same time, we're just throwing money at the military for weapons that we would hope to never use.
Exactly.
There are weapons that we have developed that are being essentially rehabbed or re-upped or refurbished that have never been used, that we spent a ton of money on. And now what we're doing is we're going to throw them away, and we're going to put in new ones in the hopes that we never use them.
Yeah, I mean there would be no reason to use all of them either way.
If you used all of them, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, so there's no purpose in holding it besides just kind of flexing our muscles to the rest of the world. But you're right, it could be used for so much more. And
we're told over and over again that we can't afford free tuition, that we can't afford health care, that we can't afford, that we can't afford to fix our bridges or roads or to make our schools, teach kids things like basic financial education.
Exactly.
And yet what we can do is we can afford to throw this money at these at these
or
projects.
even to educate the community on what's going on. I mean, Livermore Lab, I think most of the people's loyalty to that is just, I mean, if you're working there, I think it's great benefits wise, but the goal you're working towards isn't, I think, morally sound. But either way, like Tracy, including the Central Valley, Tracy is of lower statistics, but we're about 40% Hispanic, Spanish speaking or Latino, whatever, whatever you want to go by. But they refuse to translate one. I mean, they say they're in the works of it, but they have not translated one document.
Oh my gosh.
And
Wow.
this isn't
They can't
overly
afford to, I'm sure.
overly funded. I mean, how it's not a priority to educate. My family has been living there since 1997, and they knew of Site 300, but they just knew the name. And as the outreach specialist, that's what I found is more common than anything in Tracy.
Well, the thing, and I was coming over, and I'm just astounded at what little we know. I don't know a lot of this stuff. But I read a lot, and being editor of Connections, I do catch up on articles and stuff, and know a little bit about Tri Valley Cares and stuff. But it's just amazing how little just our basics, our citizens know about the basic things that are happening in our economy in our area. Yeah. I mean, people know more about Kim Kardashian's fourth baby, or I mean the things, or whatever it is. I don't know, but all these different Donald Trump's tweets about LeBron James or something.
Oh my God!
Whereas
I did see that one.
Things that are important to our local neighborhood.
Yeah.
Such as detonating nuclear devices at Site 300 are I mean, people don't know about that.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, most people are really grateful once they do know. Right. I've gone to different meetings and people outright ask me why you're. I mean, not in a good way. They ask me, why are you the one telling me this? Like, why is it you that have to tell me this? Why do I not know from the government or from the source? Like, why? Because but I lost my train of thought.
Well, I do know that the government does turn out like public notices of public hearings.
Oh yeah,
and when you look at them, they're very difficult to understand. They're written in a way that does not engage people in trying to think of how they can, how they can take part in a decision. Because I really don't think I think it goes to the point of what you're saying about not having anything translated into a language other than English.
Yeah.
Is that they're not necessarily looking for feedback. They're just looking to fulfill a requirement for whenever something occurs that will impact the public, there has to be a public hearing.
Yeah, I mean, we found that they're supposed to have a community work plan, which is basically an outline on how they're supposed to involve the community in decision-making processes. And I went to something called a TAG meeting, which was a couple of the leaders from the lab. And this was more on the Superfund site. For those who don't know what Superfund is, it's on the EPA's national priority list. So it's basically one of the most poison sites in the country.
Right, and this would be nuclear toxins, or would it be other like
both
heavy metals and things like that?
Yeah, so both toxic waste, including radioactive waste, and both sites back in the 50s.
Both sites, which
Livermore Lab main site, so it's that 1 square mile site, and also Site 300, which is an 11 square mile site.
And that's out by in the Tracy Hills.
Yeah, right next to that new development, Tracy Hills. It's in the Altamont.
Right next to the new development.
So they're building 5,500 new homes, literally
in the hills,
encroaching on the hills.
Right?
Yeah, literally encroaching on the hills to where it's on the other side of the 580. For those familiar with Tracy,
on the south side of the 580,
down Coral Hollow, which turns into Tesla Road. And
right, Tesla Road.
Yeah, and it's about less than 2 miles from, I think, the site boundary. But if I looked at Google Maps, and I'll disclose that I had to guesstimate, but I know it was no more than 5 miles from the actual firing table where they do these outdoor toxic bomb blasts at Site 300 and to the closest school was about 4 miles.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And we had a recent public hearing in Tracy, and we actually had a veteran talking about how 1,000-pound blast like this, soldiers are told 4 miles is a minimum that they need to be away from it.
Wow.
They're going to be school children, 4 miles, maybe 4.2, 4.3 miles.
So they had to do a public hearing on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with this, because this is a new development, this is a new thing that they want to do, and so when was the public hearing on this increased detonation?
So just to backtrack a little, to give a little background,
Sure.
In early November, so around Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever holidays are being celebrated, people are distracted at that time.
Yes.
So they released a public notice, very small in the Tracy Press about...
I don't even know if it made the record.
Yeah, I don't know.
but maybe it was required to be in a newspaper of record, and what they did was they found the smallest circulation that they could.
So it was a public comment process to the lab directly, or to DOE, Department of Energy. And that was until December 7th originally. So Tri-Valley Cares, we're the only watchdogs for Livermore Lab.
Yeah.
We definitely put pressure on them to extend it. They extended it 2 weeks to December 22nd, which is...
Yeah, really. Still dead time for people.
So we requested till February 5th, but they didn't give us that. So anyways, we submitted over 2,000 comments just as an organization. We don't know how many were individually submitted.
Wow.
And they went ahead and gave themselves a green light to proceed. So now the decision-making body is the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District.
So they gave themselves a green light on. So the hearing was on the public comments were due in on December 22nd.
Yeah. So that was to the lab.
And then they had to respond to those.
Yeah. So they responded in their final environmental assessment.
And when was that?
That was early February.
Okay. And then after that, they responded, and then they said, okay, well, these are really nice comments, but we're going to go ahead with it anyway.
Yeah. Okay. I think they counted, because it was a petition, I think they might have counted it as one, even though there was 2,000 signatures.
Got it.
Which is just absurd to think about.
Yeah. And the proposal was to do what?
So, the proposal is to increase. So right now, Site 300 doesn't require an air permit for their outdoor toxic bomb blast. Their current daily limit is 100 pounds a day.
100 pounds of what? Emissions?
100 pounds size of explosives.
Okay. Okay.
So in this proposal, it was over 121 toxic substances that would be emitted into the air. So they're proposing to increase this to 1,000 pounds daily limit.
So 10 times.
10 times the amount.
Per day.
Per day. They wouldn't do this every day, but 1,000 pounds is their current annual limit, which is just absurd that they want to make that their daily limit.
So it used to be 100 pounds per shot, and they could only do 10 a year because they had 1,000. And now they're saying they want 1,000 pounds per day. And what is the limit for the year?
So right now it's 1,000. They're proposing to increase it to 7,500.
Okay.
So 7.5 times the amount. So
wow.
And these aren't going to be separated because it takes a long time to set up these explosions and set up all the diagnostics. So we're looking at if they want to exercise their 1,000-pound limit, they could do 1,000-pound blasts.
Yeah, and and there's probably since they only have 7.5 of them to do, they probably would like to get as many of them as possible. And probably seven a year. So. Okay, so they explode these things. Where does the material go? So right now there is no. In the past, has there been any requirement for air quality or for the to say how much emissions are allowed?
No, not for these blasts. They do currently do this, and I'll touch on this a little later. They do open burn pits as of now, but that is under the I don't know if jurisdiction's the right word, the Department of Toxic Substances.
It's like a Superfund thing, or
yeah. So it's in the 50s and 60s they just had horrible policies on disposal. So they basically had these unlined pits and dumped everything in there. But because
this is at Site 300.
Yeah, Site 300.
Because they've been exploding things at Site 300 since the 50s and 60s.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you talk to residents who lived there back then and are still in Tracy, they talk about that it's smaller, but still you don't want to be breathing that in. One of our board members joined Tri-Valley Cares because his windows were shattered. He was living on Coral Hollow Road, which is farther than this new development, which is Tracy Hills.
Yeah, the 5,000.
So who knows what's going to happen to those guys.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be from Tracy. They're going to be from Bay Area because Tracy's not doing so hot in the affordable housing. So these are people coming from out of town.
Right, yeah, who have some money, but they don't have enough money to live in the Bay Area.
Exactly. So
Right.
they have no idea Site 300's there.
Yeah.
And I mean, they'll find out quickly.
Yeah, really. So they got approval for the 1,000 pounds.
Yeah. So it went to the air district, the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, and we were waiting for a decision from them since April. We were constantly in contact with them. Mary Lee was following up with them. We made sure they had a Spanish translator for a public hearing that we requested. They weren't going to do it originally
For the air quality.
for the air district. And we finally, I think it was mid-June, they put out a preliminary decision, which is an authority to construct. So it's basically we have the intentions of giving them the permit. We're going to open it up for public comments.
Okay.
Within that, they also said the public hearing, which was on July 12th.
Okay.
We had over 80 people. We did outreach in all the Central Valley.
This is in Livermore?
It was in Tracy.
Okay.
So it was a surreal experience for me. I mean, I hadn't been to a public hearing before, but seeing all the efforts that we did come together, there was over 80 people.
Wow.
And it looked like the audience was hosting the public hearing because the air district was stumped. They weren't expecting it, which is just, we kept telling them it was controversial. We kept telling them there was a concern, but it didn't seem like they were taking it seriously until we were literally face to face with them.
Sure. So to a person, the comments that were at that public hearing were to say, well, either slow down or stop, or what was the general message that the Air Quality Board people heard?
One of the things was in their preliminary decision, they're only able to do that if they don't give if they don't do a full CEQA analysis. That's the California Environmental Quality Act. It's a full detail analysis, which would take cumulative impacts.
Like an EIR, like an environmental impact report?
I think it's a little more extensive.
Okay,
I'm not.
okay,
I don't
okay.
quote me on
Okay,
that.
that's fine.
Our staff attorney would know more. But so they didn't. That would take in the open pit burns as well. Kind of take in all these factors.
Because we're talking about the air. We're talking about the quality of what people are breathing, and also taking into consideration the new development you're talking about, right?
The new development, already the existing low quality of air in the valley.
Yeah.
And it was just crazy that they didn't do it. And they didn't look for so much. They didn't know the city of Tracy had submitted a public comment opposing this proposal during the original comment period to the DOE. They didn't know Tracy Hill's lawyers also submitted a comment. They didn't know the Regional Water Board submitted a comment indicating lack of there was discrepancies in the environmental analysis from the lab that they didn't address some things that the Regional Water Board is supposed to be looking for. There was also, they didn't look for the Department of Toxic Substances, also submitted a technical comment, and the San Joaquin Board of Supervisors. So we literally had to hand them all these documents that I guess they just didn't ask questions. It was every time we said something, they said, oh, well, the lab said this. Well, the lab said this. It's like, that's great that you're asking them, but you're also supposed to do your own research because if you're relying on
you can't automatically just rubber stamp whatever the lab is saying. That's right.
I mean, I understand it. We know it's intimidating, a federal department versus a regional agency.
Well, a federal department that has unlimited amounts of funds and that is so familiar with this law and so familiar with getting their way in terms of getting. I mean, obviously, environmental corners have been cut at Livermore Lab for years. I mean, if you're talking about open pits and things, and so to the extent that that local folks are coming up and facing up against this huge, Goliath. You know?
We have right now at least 1,600 comments, which I personally handed to the new petitions. There was new signatures.
So that happened subsequent to the July 12th meeting.
Yeah, I know. On the July 12th
July
meeting,
12th
I gave it to their
so what?
permit
So
services manager.
today is August 6th.
Mhm.
So what has happened since the July 12th meeting and public hearing?
So we've definitely kept people in tune. We have a new sign-on letter. They could find that at anyone who wants to sign it, please do. It's on www.trivalleycares.org. That's CARES. But yes, please sign it. You can scan it and send it to, you can actually send it to my email, which is valeria@trivalleycares.org.
I'm sure when you get on the website, the hopefully the petition is pretty prominent.
The deadline is tomorrow. So
tomorrow.
Yes.
So it's August 7th.
Yeah, August 7th. So
okay.
They only gave us 30 days, so
Well, okay, so what happens after all those? Okay, so everybody should be right now getting onto the Tri-Valley Cares website, and it's pretty simple: www.trivalleycares, just like it sounds.org. And go on there and just look around for a petition, a petition that talks about
Control F, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, looking for the the Site 300 petition against the new blasting that they were going to be doing. So and get that in by August 7th, by tomorrow. What happens after tomorrow? What happens if, oh my gosh, we missed it and it's the 8th? Or what is the next step that the air quality people have to do?
So it could be sent to theirs. I should have given their email address, which is
who
the air district.
The air district.
It's public notices at valleyair.org.
Public notices at valleyair.org.
Yes, actually do that one, not mine.
Okay, because that's straight.
Yeah,
to
that's straight to them.
Public notices at
valleyair.org.
Valleyair.org.
Yeah.
Okay.
So or I think it's that.
That's an important one too. So the thing is that people send that in.
Yeah.
Now the Air Quality Control Board has to respond to that.
Yeah. So I asked them, and they said they're gonna probably take about a month. We're hoping, if we're being optimistic. They reply to it in the same way the lab does, in terms of their final decision comes with the responses, which is.
Oh, really? Is there an appeal process?
We plan on appealing if they do.
And where would that does that get appealed to, like I don't know, some sort of legislative body? Or
I believe they've done Site 3. So Livermore Lab Site 300 has done a proposal not this big, but they've done something like this. I believe it was in 2007, and our previous staff attorney was also did that, and I believe they got it to Cal EPA, so the California EPA, and that's when they got it. And I think the lab just withdrew their proposal.
Wow. Okay.
So we've stopped it before.
Yeah.
We've stopped it, and we've stopped it with community involvement.
Yeah.
Totally grassroots.
Very good.
So
that's
really
what politicians and they'll listen to. I mean, they'll listen to people individually coming up with good, solid arguments, and you'll find a lot of them at trivalleycares.org, the website. This is Peace and Justice Network Connections. I'm here with Valeria Salamanca. We're talking about what's going on out at Site 300, which is our own little backyard over there in Tracy, and where they're talking about, or our federal government, our government, is talking about exploding more devices that we really don't need. Yes. So, I mean, I can't say that I feel more secure if we have more and more nukes or more efficient nukes. I think that a lot of us would feel more secure if we actually try to negotiate ourselves out of situations rather than bluster and talking about how we're going to.
It's only going to keep escalating.
Yeah.
If we don't stop, it'll. I don't want to find a bomb that's more than 3,300 times of Hiroshima.
Yeah, really.
In 10 years, it'll be 10,000.
Yeah.
More.
The thing is that really this is an issue that really cuts across partisan lines, because it is true that when Republicans are in power, these weapons do they find new ways to develop new weapons, and there's more money available. But the fact of the matter is, when Democrats take over, there is not a you don't see any of these labs shutting down. You don't see there has to be because there are a lot of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
There is I guess you would call it a security lobby in Washington D.C. that tries to stoke up fear against all comers, against all other countries who have military budgets a tiny fraction of what ours is, and yet we are constantly being reminded that we can't be too safe. We can't have too many nuclear weapons. We can't, we have to keep on building these things even though we're not going to use them. And at some point, it's going to, bite us.
Yeah, definitely. And on two sides. So on the side of Congress, just because I went with Tri-Valley Cares, they're part of a national alliance, which is the Alliance for Nuclear Accountability. Okay. So it's I think it's about over 24 organizations from around the country.
National Alliance for
Alliance for Nuclear Accountability. So it's a national alliance. Okay. And we went to talk to Congress. It's called DC Days, and so it's basically a blitz on informing Congress. And some of them are aware, but they really, because I guess they have so much on their plate, they rely on these events that we have to inform them, because they're not looking at it as in detail as the experts like Mary Lee and the other experts across the country. Because when we talk to them, sometimes they don't know what it is. They have new staff or
and these are the people who represent us. They probably know Kim Kardashian's fourth child, but they don't know the price of milk, or they don't know how to pump their own gas, and they don't know basic things like how important is it to continue pumping money into a nuclear machine that really shouldn't ever be thought of as being useful. Yeah. So you went and you talked with legislators.
So I spoke with my own representative, Jeff Denham, also McNerney, Swalwell, which is over in Livermore, and we actually got to talk to Senator Kamala Harris's staff also. So it was productive.
That's pretty important. I guess Tri-Valley Cares has and also this group of 24 has a certain amount of sway and also knows their business.
And they all have, decades of experience just analyzing these policies and these proposals, because if someone's not looking at them, no one's going to act on it. So it's really, I think, a wonderful thing that they come together, because they are small groups, very small staffed. But when they come together, like we had over 100 meetings in total. Yeah. So it was talking to all members of Congress based on our different states also. But.
And then coming back home, Tri-Valley Cares does have regular meetings.
Yes.
For members, and you say 5,700 folks who are affiliated members of Tri-Valley Cares. So when our meeting, like if somebody wanted to get involved with Tri-Valley Cares, how would they do that? How would they, would they come to a meeting? Would they go to a website? What would they do?
Yeah, so they could definitely check out our website. On the right-hand side, there's upcoming events. We have a monthly letter to the editor parties. That's one of our main forms of informing the public, because it's free. You're able to
and you get together in Livermore?
Yeah, so sometimes people will write from home. We can help with tips for people. I never wrote a letter to the editor before, but since I've been employed at Tri-Valley Cares, I've written, I think, like 10 or 15.
Once a month.
Yes, I know, whatever the maximum. And we also have, I believe it's the third Thursday of every month, we have our meetings in Livermore. So all that information's online. But in terms of the Central Valley, so we're actually, since I'm on the radio, I'll go ahead and say we are looking for outreach actually to take my job. So if anyone is is interested,
it's sad that you're going, but it's good to give folks opportunities to take part in this, because as long as I've been editing the paper and even before. and I'm 60 years old, I just have known about Tri-Valley Cares, and it is just a truly professional, top-notch organization that provides excellent analysis, excellent information, excellent demonstrations. You know, there's always the Easter Day Memorial, and then there's also always Hiroshima.
The Good Friday,
and the Good Friday, right? And the Hiroshima demo, and everything in between. And it's just professionally done, and it comes from the top. And Marilia Kelly is just a top-notch organizer and executive director. She's been there for years, it's, if you have a chance or if you want to apply for this job, I'm sure the satisfaction you get from doing such positive work that is so important will just really stand out in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned so much, and to give the opportunity to someone else, you create community connections. And I have a wonderful mentor who is Mary Leah, and I mean, her background's journalism, so her research is. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, I don't know how you're able to go so in depth, but it really just. It makes it accessible to people because, like you said, it's hyper technical. If you're not a scientist and you're reading these documents released by the lab meant for the public, it's It's
and sometimes you feel like that it's by design. You know that they make these issues so dense. I mean, and there's a lot of times when public agencies don't really want public input. They'll use the most technical information or the most technical verbiage to really sort of mask what they're doing. And so it does take somebody to wade through it. Bill Jennings does that very well with and Barbara Bergam with Restore the Delta in terms of translating water information into information that you and I can understand. And so, and Mary Leah does that excellently through her newsletters and just through every time she speaks. So it's great that an opening is there for an outreach person.
And we have wonderful staff.
And now the job is in Livermore.
So we're looking hopefully for someone based more in the Tracy area, preferably bilingual, just because we're trying to tap more into the disadvantaged communities that are literally
the lab
just
doesn't translate
ignored.
Their material, so somebody has to.
I thought Tracy was loud. I was like, oh, we're almost half. And then I went to Patterson and talked to them. They're like, we're about 60%. I was like, oh, okay. We definitely need to translate.
And Site 300, I guess it's closer to Tracy than to Patterson.
Yeah, so it's about 8 miles from the city center.
Wow.
I think it's about 9 miles from my house, which
Coral
is on
Hollow
the north side.
Road. Is that it on the way?
So yeah, if you go down Coral Hollow past the 580 towards the hills, it's in there. It's pretty hidden. I didn't know where it was. I mean, this was through word of mouth how I found out about it. So.
And so now there are homes going in.
Yeah.
So these homes have all been approved.
Yeah. So part of it was before I joined Tri-Valley Cares, so I don't know as much, but I know there was definitely input on the fact that a Superfund site was so close.
Yeah.
And I know from what Mary Leah told me, because she joined as a concerned neighbor originally, because she lived across the street from Livermore Lab.
Yeah.
And they sneaked that Superfund disclosure in the stack of papers that you get when you buy a house. So I don't know if they're gonna find out.
Yeah,
I hope they do. I mean, they'll wonder what those booms are.
Well, I'm sure there will be, an uproar. So if all fails, when would it be the soonest that they would start blowing things up over there?
I don't think I could give an exact date, but I know a firing table exists. I know they have to lay down gravel or a cement base. That's their solution to not disturbing the soil. So I guess I skipped this part. The firing table, building 851, is actually hasn't been finished.
A firing table. It's not like a table.
It's a pad. It's a pad. It's just like
a big,
gravel
thick
pad.
Concrete pad.
So Yeah, so
and is it covered with a building or probably not? I mean,
no, it's outdoor.
You could explode.
Completely outdoor, no air pollution control technology. When the air district was looking at it, they said, "Oh, there's no alternatives. It would cost them too much." When we did the calculation, it was less than 1% of their budget. And we're like, you could build something. I mean, they already have something built on Nevada, Site 300. I mean, personally, I don't think really has a purpose.
Yeah.
They have other facilities for that, but.
And they're exploding these things so that they can develop this new weaponry, or is it just to check to make certain that the old stuff is still up to snuff?
So we don't have confirmed yet exactly what it is. I know from suspicions, our staff attorney, I know he mentioned Site 300 plans on maybe requesting funds from Homeland Security. We know Livermore Lab is the lead lab on... it's either the Warhead 84 or 78.
Okay, that's the new one you're talking about?
Yeah, so one of them's the new one. One of them's the interoperable weapon, which...
So the thing is so the development of this testing, is that is that going to push us towards more low-level tactical nukes? Is that the objective?
Well, we think so, because one of them is... was included in the nuclear posture review, was a low yield weapon. I don't know if that's the one at Livermore Lab exactly, or if it's the interoperable one. I know I think it was NNSA refers to it as interoperable still, but when the nuclear posture review referred to it, it was the Warhead 78, I believe.
You know, it just seems that, you know, I really value Tri-Valley Cares, but it just seems amazing that this is the level of public input that we have to increasing our nuclear stockpile. I mean, it's not really necessarily an issue that people are going to vote yes or no for their representative on, because there's a whole ton of issues, but the fact that the only way that we could slow down nuclear weapon development is by attacking the pollution at the testing site just seems like the tail wagging the dog. I mean, it would seem that the protest should be saying, no, we don't, like the nuclear freeze movement back in the 80s. No, we don't have, there is no longer we don't have to have this sort of nuclear deterrent that is so huge anymore. And you know, you wonder if when we try to stir up trouble, or when we insist on pushing our agenda on other countries, if we don't just end up trying to justify the development of these nukes that really have no purpose at all. And you know, I don't know. It's great that there is a Tri-Valley Cares to protest this end of it, because it's like the only way that we can protest nuclear weapons.
Well, we do work. I know I do more of the local stuff, but we do work locally, nationally, and actually internationally also. So, in terms of deterring, or not deterring, but stopping further nuclear weapon development, I know Mary Leah, she says that you need money and you need people. Yeah. So, and you need to pay people. So it's really money. Yeah. So really starting with that nuclear posture review, looking at the budget, informing Congress, if they're more looking at fiscal responsibility, showing how much money is actually going to be put into it. Yeah. And maybe they want to be a little more fiscally conservative, whatever appeals to them. I know we talk to people on the House Armed Services Committee and make sure they know not only the general basis of it, but also know like how we mentioned, like how one is so going to be so different. It's going to be pushing for full scale nuclear testing. So it's really also talking to congressmen, either if they live like if they're near a Superfund site or near a nuclear weapons facility, encouraging them to get on the right committees, making the right decisions. And
well, you know, it has been it is, you know, as Donald Trump has proved, it's so easy to destroy something. It's very difficult to build something, but it's very easy to destroy something.
Yeah.
And what the international trust or the international goodwill or the international ability for us to, put some limits on these warheads is being systematically broken down by an administration that is getting rid of the. Today was the first day that they announced that they're going to be reimposing sanctions in Iran. That the North Korea photo op that they had about 2 months ago is essentially did nothing to concretely take those nukes off the table because the United States had no intention of making the North Korean regime more feel like they weren't going to be overthrown. And so there was no security angle for the North Koreans to base their denuclearization on, and so they'll continue. And so with Iran. And so it's like these partial building blocks that are that were set up. In fact, at the time when Bill Clinton was leaving office, there was a possibility of an agreement with North Korea to denuclearize, and very quickly, if you look at the history of it, George W. Bush systematically destabilized that agreement and went back on agreements that the United States said that they were going to do, and then started calling them part of the axis of evil. And at that point, that's where North Korea said, well, we can't trust the United States, and they kept on going. And people very easily forget where the United States has backed out on agreements to denuclearize and or to try to de-escalate issues because of, I'm sure there's just so much money. The lawyers that you're having to face at the lab, they're paid for with our tax dollars, and they just got a huge increase. So the thing is our tax dollars are paying to put these things, and it is our money. Yeah. And so as taxpayers, we have a right to say something about about whether or not this stuff continues. Yeah,
and that's I actually have the pie chart.
Oh, you have a pie chart?
That's actually why we translate their budget. Like, is this the camera?
Yeah.
So if you see that Livermore Lab has a really good reputation for more like civilian science. Let's see. So. And
this here is the nuclear weapons activities, 88.6%. Is that $1.3 billion? That's a lot of money.
That's the budget request from Livermore Lab. So people who think it's solar energy, that's a very small portion. Any energy alternatives, things like that. Livermore Lab, the fact is a nuclear weapons lab. There's no doubt about it, and more people should know, and that's why there's so much
fossil energy research and development. 1.4 million. That's
0.1%.
That's 0.1%. Yep. Defense environmental cleanup, 0.08%.
So that's like the super fund.
That's I mean, these things all add up to about 12% or 11% of the total budget. We're talking about $1.3 billion. I mean, and with these amounts of money is the reason why we can't afford things like single-payer health care, or why we can't afford to send our kids to college without having to come up with a huge debt out on the other end. There's just, really, every millennial is looking at student debt as being their major issue. Yeah. And it's, I think a lot of us are getting weary of this. And yet, we have an administration here that is doubling down on the poor decisions that we've made in the past. So it's very important to embrace organizations like Tri-Valley Cares. You guys do fantastic work.
Yeah, join us. We can send you a newsletter. We have, I believe, about weekly blogs. Sometimes if there's more events, we'll post more. They get too busy. Yeah. We're a very small staff. So.
Yeah. So how big is the staff at Tri-Valley Cares?
Now 3.
3?
Without
You're
me.
Kidding.
Yes.
You do all that with 3 staff?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That is astounding.
Sometimes I go in there and Mary Lee is like, I got here at 5 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa, so she's a trooper, and she's.
I mean,
she's
you leverage a lot
yeah.
of volunteers as well, and I'm sure you have a lot of good,
and
steady
our
volunteers.
staff attorney is wonderful,
Yeah.
and our IT guy, and he's in Manteca.
Yeah.
But it's just
that's amazing.
It's amazing to see the things that blossom from such a small. You would think Tri-Valley Cares, and you see us, and it's
I think it's huge.
Two little rooms.
It's huge.
So
and what that is that's encouraging to the rest of us, who are working on a shoestring. I know that Peace and Justice Connections and this radio station. I mean, we have no paid staff, and yet we're able to get things done. And what it should be is it should be encouraging to just about everybody who's listening, or anybody who is interested in working on issues, that you may not be paid a whole lot of money, but you'll get paid in a different way that you'll really enjoy. But also that you can get things done without a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
There's just sort of this mindset sometimes is, oops, we don't have any funding for that, I guess we can't do it.
Yeah.
And it's not true, because a lot of stuff gets done without a whole lot of money.
Yeah, and I think if there's enough people, even if they're just willing to do something small, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It does, even if it's. I know we have some volunteers who just come in and make phone calls.
Yeah.
We have some interns regularly who help with
People are learning how to
administrative
organize.
work.
I mean, because the thing is what you learn at an organization like Tri-Valley Cares is how to put on a demonstration. It's how to go
We're
to.
always looking for interns. But.
And how to organize for a public hearing.
Yeah.
And how to find information and translate it into a language that people can understand.
Yeah.
Not just Spanish, but I mean just an English language that people can understand.
Exactly. It's lab languages.
Yeah.
Well,
and just about any issue that is high level, that is big enough to make a ton of money, is going to have its own little technical information group.
Definitely.
And so I'm thinking of water right now, because I know that there's a lot of Donald Trump comes up with his deal about it, because we're allowing too much water to go out to the Pacific Ocean.
I just read that on Facebook.
That's why we can't handle our fires.
Of his.
Yeah. So I mean. But the thing is that, I mean, you don't have to be as stupid as that. I mean, the thing is that there are but it's very difficult to sometimes translate these documents into why should we be preserving habitat? Why should we be doing things like that? So anyway, we're about our time is almost up. I just wanted to remind people that on Thursday, September 6th. That there's going to be a hair-raising affair, which is a fundraising effort for the Peace and Justice Network. It's going to be the second night of the musical Hair. It's going to be at Stockton Civic Theater. It starts at 5 o'clock, a party at the patio, with the musical at 7:30. Tickets are a low $50, and it covers it. All proceeds go to Peace and Justice Network. There's going to be great food, great music on the patio for the first couple hours, and then you'll come and see a great show. So please save the date, Thursday, September 6th at Stockton Civic Theater by Venetian Guards. So anyway, that's been a wonderful hour. It went by really fast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Valeria Salamanca has been here with Tri-Valley Cares, and I'm Bruce Giudici with Peace and Justice Connections. Thanks for listening.